Something feels off about how we are evaluating talent on this Cleveland Browns roster, and we need to talk about it because the development of tight end Harold Fannin Jr. is now under the microscope. Browns legend Gary Barnidge just weighed in on the young star, specifically calling out his lack of blocking as a major hurdle to becoming an elite difference maker. This is critical because if Fannin is pigeonholed as a pure receiver, he limits our entire offensive ceiling. My name is Lucas, and the more details emerge, the harder it is to ignore what is happening behind the scenes. Smash that like button, subscribe, and drop your name and city in the comments below. Let's get into it. Something feels off regarding how we evaluate talent on this roster, and the development of tight end Harold Fannin Jr. is now firmly under the microscope. As a young star with immense physical gifts, Fannin Jr. has electrified our offense, yet his path forward remains a subject of intense debate among those who understand the nuances of the position. Browns legend Gary Barnidge recently weighed in on this rising talent during an interview with Noah Olsen and Eric Williams. Barnidge, who earned a Pro Bowl selection in 2015 and remains a fan favorite for his reliable hands and iconic plays, emphasized that the difference between a good player and a true difference maker is the ability to block. He warned that while Fannin Jr. currently thrives as a receiver in a tight end frame, the league will eventually shut him down if he remains one-dimensional. Here is where it gets interesting, as this technical critique highlights a divide between raw potential and the gritty reality required to succeed under head coach Todd Monken. The fan base is naturally torn, feeling a wave of nostalgia for the toughness Barnidge once brought to the field, while simultaneously worrying about our offensive scheme. We value the highlight reel catches, but there is a growing fear that pigeonholing Fannin Jr. as a pure receiver will limit his ceiling and our overall offensive versatility. Supporters are encouraged by this expert mentorship, viewing it as a necessary passing of the torch, yet we must reconcile this advice with the reality of our current roster construction. If our system prioritizes speed and spacing over traditional heavy-set formations, can Fannin Jr. actually find enough snaps to refine his blocking technique without sacrificing the very production that makes him so dangerous? This tactical dilemma brings us to the deeper questions regarding what is truly happening inside the facility during these closed-door practices. The most startling reality facing this front office is that Harold Fannin Jr. is currently tracking toward a snap count percentage lower than our primary blocking tight end, a situation that contradicts his high draft status and athletic upside. This developmental friction stems from a front office desire to integrate him slowly, balanced against the urgent necessity of having a reliable presence in the trenches during crucial third down conversions. We have seen this hesitation before with past prospects who were forced to prioritize blocking over their natural playmaking instincts, often resulting in a stunted career trajectory that left everyone frustrated by year 3. Behind the scenes, the coaching staff is likely grappling with the math of our current roster. They know that keeping a specialist on the field reduces the versatility of our personnel groupings. The front office views this as a long-term investment, yet they are under intense pressure to produce wins immediately while navigating a tight salary cap environment. If Fannin cannot balance his pass catching with the physical demands of the line, the coaching staff may be forced to look toward outside depth or shift their entire formation strategy to favor heavier sets that do not highlight his unique skill set. And that changes everything regarding how we evaluate the ceiling of this current roster. When we look at the internal scouting reports, the worry is not about his hands, but about his willingness to engage defenders at the point of attack. If he does not demonstrate consistent improvement in his leverage and hand placement during these upcoming practice sessions, he will remain a situational asset rather than a cornerstone of our future offensive success. It is a classic case of balancing patience with the harsh reality that our current offensive system demands a complete, multi-dimensional player to function at a high level. The stakes for our organization have shifted significantly because we are currently at a crossroads regarding how we allocate our limited practice repetitions and roster resources. It is no longer just about talent accumulation, but about achieving a balanced offensive identity that can survive the long grind of a full season. This is the part that gets me, as we watch Harold Fannin Jr. struggle to find his place in a system that demands versatility over singular skill sets. If he remains one-dimensional, we face a precarious situation where our depth chart becomes predictable, forcing our coaching staff to lean heavily on older, more static veterans while leaving our younger options on the sideline. The direct impact on our roster is twofold. We must either dedicate specialized coaching hours to his blocking technique or accept that his snap counts will diminish against physical defenses that prioritize line play. This reality creates a ripple effect for our upcoming schedule, particularly when we face tough physical squads like the Bengals or the Ravens. In those critical matchups, an inability to hold the edge as a blocker will force our offense to abandon certain play-action packages, essentially telegraphing our intentions to the opposition. Our playoff aspirations depend on this team being unpredictable, yet our current reliance on a receiver-first tight end approach makes us far too easy to scout and contain. As Cleveland Browns fans, we must recognize that if we cannot solidify the tight end spot as a dual threat position, our standing within the division will continue to slip. Developing a complete player is the only path forward if we truly intend to contend, and the coaching staff has a very narrow window to rectify these technical flaws before the pressure of the regular season fully takes hold. The argument for forcing Harold Fannin Jr. to master the blocking aspect of his game is rooted in longevity and long-term utility for our roster. By becoming a reliable blocker, he ensures that he stays on the field for every down, preventing defensive coordinators from using substitution packages to predict our plays. Think about it this way. When a tight end can seal the edge against a physical defensive end, he opens up the entire playbook for our running backs, making the offense exponentially more versatile and harder to scheme against. However, the downside is equally significant because asking a young player to shift his focus away from his primary strength as a receiver could stifle his natural progression. We run the risk of turning a game-breaking weapon into a utility player who is merely adequate at everything but exceptional at nothing. NFL analysts from various outlets are currently debating this exact balancing act, comparing Fannin Jr. to other emerging prospects like the tight ends utilized by the Buffalo Bills or the Minnesota Vikings. They suggest that forcing this evolution too early might derail his momentum, especially while we see how other teams manage their young stars. Here is where I land on this. While I respect the wisdom of a veteran like Gary Barnidge, I worry that we might be overcomplicating a simple reality. Fannin Jr. was drafted to create mismatches in the secondary, not to engage in trench warfare with veteran linebackers. If we force him to become a classic dual-threat tight end at the expense of his natural explosiveness, we might lose the very thing that makes him special in our system. I believe we need to let him develop his rhythm as a pass catcher first, then integrate the blocking demands as he gains more comfort with the speed of the professional game. The future of our Cleveland Browns rests on how well we balance raw athleticism with the fundamentals that win championships in the harsh winters of the AFC North. When we look at the development of Harold Fannin Jr., we are really looking at the identity of our entire offensive approach for the coming years. If he masters the blocking techniques highlighted by Gary Barnidge, this offense gains a versatility that prevents defensive coordinators from simply selling out against the pass. What makes this even bigger is how it signals a shift toward a more disciplined physical team identity under Todd Monken that prizes long-term sustainability over quick fixes. You should feel encouraged heading into this season because this critique shows that we are finally focusing on the fine details that separate good squads from true title contenders. Instead of just chasing explosive plays, we are investing in the grit required to win tough games in December. It is refreshing to see a legend like Barnidge passing down that classic, hard-nosed wisdom, ensuring that our young stars understand that a tight end must be a weapon in the trenches just as much as he is a target in the red zone. We are watching a transformation that demands patience, but promises a much higher reward if we stick to this course. With that said, do you believe Harold Fannin Jr. should prioritize mastering his blocking technique over increasing his receiving targets this season? If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Dawg Pound. I'll see you in the next one. However, your opinions on the roster shakeup are just as important as the analysis. Leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts on whether this strategy will finally lead the franchise to success.